this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to miamighostchronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogman, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, how's everybody doing? Good? I'm good. I gotta show you my t-shirt if you can. Reindeer Run. I got this at a 5K I just recently did. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, there's an ulterior motive. As you all know, I'm a subconscious behaviorist, hypnotist. And everybody now, we're coming up on the end of the year, New Year's resolution, blah, 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 blah. All that, now everybody making their promises, after I eat all the food I want, and that's it. This is the year that I'm gonna drop the weight or whatever's on the. So everybody's thinking, okay, this is gonna be my last hurrah during the holidays. And the reason why I bring this up is how tricky the subconscious can be. And a couple of years ago, I did a video but it's on my hypnosis channel about this. And the reason why I'm gonna do this is about 2 years ago, I got a little bit of a knee injury. And I kind of twisted because I used to do once upon a time in a galaxy far, far away. I used to do long distance biking, not the fast stuff, not these ultra slim. No, I was like 150 miles in 2 days, that kind of deal. Anyway, and I gradually scaled back, and I was pretty good about 5Ks and all that stuff, walking stuff. And about, when I moved, forget it, that just does everything as far as what you normally do. But about 2 years ago, I had a knee injury. And I was so wigged out that I wasn't mending that for some weird reason. I said, I'm going to get on a 5K and I'm going to walk. Because I refuse to think that, man, my knee is messed up permanently. And it wasn't really that serious a problem with my knee. But it was just, for me, it was like, you don't realize how much your knee does for you until you can't. It's hurting. So anyway, of course I did the 5K. I was the last one back. I was like, okay, Marlene. I had SAG support. I was like, she's the last lady in the back of the line, way in the back. But I did it. I finished it. As a matter of fact, around that time I did too. So I don't know, I punished myself. I don't know what I was thinking. So anyway, fast forward 2 years. And I'm doing these, I want to do a 5K. I want to do this. I want to do that. And of course, what happens is, in the summer, it's too hot. No, in the winter, no, it's going to be cold up. So I said, nope. I know the way subconscious works, how it will sabotage you. So during the summer, I was like, man, because honestly, this summer here was brutal. It was hotter than normal. So I was like, man, no, I'm going to wait till fall, winter comes in. That'll be it. I'll do that. So there was one. And then, of course, around Thanksgiving, there was, more people sponsor these 5Ks because exactly the weather's cooled down. So I go to one around Thanksgiving. Well, you could sign up always for all these events. Usually a benefit charity. You could pick up your packet and be ready. And I'm telling myself, and my point is, this is how the subconscious does you in. Nah, you know what? I'm not going to buy this stuff like the packet and give the money till the same day, because what if I don't go? Just in case. Sure enough, I didn't. Even though they even sometimes give you a discount. And in my experience, like I said, in 5Ks, usually I had my packets from before, but I had seen where people would show up that same day and they would just let them enter. You pay the money, maybe a little bit more, and there you go, you're in there. Marlene's thinking, I'm going to do the same thing. I had dressed up. I'd even gotten some new, walking outfit. I was good. Well, guess what? I got there. The The 5K hadn't technically started yet, but I'm telling you, this is the way subconscious works. When I get there, the desk where they give out the packets and they check you in, they're picking up, and I'm like, hey, I'm here for. They're like, no, we stopped about 20 minutes ago. I'm like, oh, normally I know that you could do it. No, we just, I was like, believe it or not, you could think, well, Marlene, you just weren't, you didn't get informed. Bullshit. I was informed. That was the way the subconscious works. Okay. I knew that I was risking it. Like, it was like, well, what can I do? I guess I can't do the 5K. My point being that this is what a lot of people do now with their New Year's resolution and all their best intentions. And they start off, yeah, yeah, yeah. Then a bunch of stuff happens that looks from the outside like, that was not your fault. You could, how did you know that you couldn't have done this, or, or it would interfere with your schedule? One of those things. And this is how it works. So this time I said, nope. I looked up another, I know what this is, my subconscious trying to do me in, trying to like, and I started doing that same scenario. Because by the way, for all the time that it was super hot in the summer, normally the temperatures we're getting now, you don't see them until January, February, and here they are. So I'm doing the, oh my God, this most of these 5Ks, they're early in the morning. It's going to be like, man, it's going to be really cold. And by the way, now with daylight savings time, I don't know which one we're on. It's still pretty dark when so I'm already trying to talk. I'm like, oh, here we go. It just so happens there's one 5K that started at 4 p.m. So forget that excuse. Yeah. Nah, you don't have to worry about it. It's daylight and the weather's still decent and 4 p.m. So sure enough, I made myself sign up for it the day before. I kid you not. It was like at noon. The day before was the cutoff point. You could have done it, but they would have charged you more. I signed up at 11:30. That tells you how much I'm dragging my you-know-what. But I signed up. I showed up, which, by the way, oh, man. Note to self, I didn't realize that the route was down this main street here where I live, where they were going to do a parade later on, a Thanksgiving parade. So as I'm going down there with this group of people, which, by the way, I fell to the back, but, I had people on both sides who had already come and put their lawn chairs up and, and all these things watching us. And towards the end, I had people cheering me because it was like, oh, she said the last 5 people that are, because, we went up and then we doubled back and we came down this main road, they had divvied it up. And by the way, and you also, something that you forget about, in that main street, there's hills. Let me tell you something. There's nothing like going up a hill. Let's put it this way. I was loving life, but I was like, why didn't I think that I was going to have an audience of people? Because the parade was going to be way after. But as you know, people want to get a good, they want to get a nice, bought their lawn chairs and with the kids. And there was already vendors running around. And I'm getting, hey. And I'm like, thanks. And I'm like, this is really embarrassing. But anyway, I did it. And I got my t-shirt. And over there is my, they gave me this big medal, it's like one of those participation, what they do with the kids. You participated, we're going to give you a nice big clunky medal. My point being that, yeah, be prepared that now when you think this is going to be the year that I'm going to do whatever it is, fill in the blank, count on it. That you're going to try to, even though you might even get a membership, buy new clothes, whatever, I don't know, whatever it is that you're trying to do, behavior modification of some type, you're going to try to talk yourself into it. And of course, this is all resistance to change. So there's my 2 cents worth in. It has nothing to do with the paranormal, but does have to do with the subconscious and what we do or don't do, especially in this time of year. So if you can, go to hypnosisdiy.com. That's my website. And also my YouTube. And I do have that video on how we sabotage ourselves for New Year's and what we do and how to get around it. And why sometimes even waiting now for the new year is not really the best time, because you ask yourself, wow, sometimes this is a pattern. This is the where, yeah, I typically make all these promises and you end up crash and burn. So sometimes this might not even be the best time of year to do it, but that's a whole nother story. But anyway, let's get on to the good part. Oh, and by the way, yes, the rescue kitten is over here. Marnie's over here. I've got her in her crate. It's because people have been asking me about her. Anyway, today's guest, he's been here before at Stories of the Supernatural. His name is Brent Thomas. He is the host of Paranormal Portal, an internet radio show featuring all things paranormal. He's had a lifelong interest in the paranormal and has had several of his own experiences. And in that show, he dives into the paranormal and the unknown. And I'm going to have a link to his show. But help me welcome him. How are you doing today, Brent?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for having me back. That's always a good sign after I
Yes, of
make an
course.
appearance.
Of
If
course, of course.
somebody wants to be back, it's like, oh, yes. No,
Yeah,
I'm
of
thrilled to be
course.
here. Happy holidays to you and all your listeners.
Yes, like we all, you know what? Sometimes I tell everybody, when we're here, it almost seems like, and then before you know it, the holidays are upon us. I want to say that the
I
home
know.
stretch down from Halloween onward, it's like a slippery slide. And then before you know it, you're at the New Year's and,
Oh,
you
yeah, I
know,
know. I've noticed that as I get older, time
mm-hmm.
is just becoming just a blink. It's like
Yes,
when I was a kid, a, a weekend would last forever. And now
yes.
it's like, 3 years go by in the heartbeat. It's like, what in the hell's going
Well,
on?
don't you remember when you were a kid, somebody told you a year, you'd be like, a year? That's forever.
Yeah.
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 That's forever.
And now it's like I'm scheduling conferences for, like next September and stuff. And it's like,
Yes.
that's going to be like in 5 minutes from now, the way it's
Sure.
going. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
time and
think
I,
I believe me. There's a I don't know if it's time itself or if it's how we look at it,
sure.
but yeah, it or sometimes I want to say also it was lifestyle. Like we get so caught up with this and
Yeah.
the this and the that
Yeah.
and then before you know it, it's the weekend again and it's like Friday, that kind of deal.
Yeah. And then you think about all the things you didn't get done that we're going to get done this week and it's already over.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, all those projects and things that you're like, man, I
Mhm.
got to do this and I got to do that. Before you know it, it's Monday again.
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
We kind of
Story of
like
my life.
on a treadmill. No, that's what we were talking earlier before we started to roll. Like we're talking about. I was like, I want to simplify things. I want to have a low key holidays because believe it or not, that sometimes is like good. Some people say that's dull. It's like dull is not always a bad thing. All right,
I'm good with
dull is not
dull.
always a bad. Yeah.
That's the thing. And I think, you know, uh, I'm sure you are as well, Marlene. And I can't claim to know you really well personally, but we've talked a couple times now,
Mm-hmm.
and you seem like an incredibly sincere and down to earth soul.
Oh
But
yes.
there's a whole different version of me that is the private version. Like as a show creator, host, and all of this, I guess you push yourself into these episodes because you want people to be excited. You wanted them to feel
Sure.
the energy. You want them to respond to what you're putting into it, the passion and all of that. And they do. They reciprocate it. But the private me is I'm very much a hermit.
Well, you
Like,
know what? There's times where my husband will tell me, "Are you okay?" Because I'm really quiet.
mm,
And then I'll look at him and I'll go, well, I'm thinking, it does happen on occasion. I'm just being, like a smart ass. But there's times, like you said, where you just want to I just want to veg out, think,
yeah,
let my mind just stray somewhere.
right. Yeah.
That kind of deal.
Right, because it is a very cerebral and it does you do to do these shows right. I think you got to put a lot of yourself and your energy
Mm-hmm.
into it to bring up that level and that that presence that really makes people want to join in and become part of the experience. And I've been very very blessed by having so many incredible people having found my show and been so incredibly supportive and stuff. But there is a contrast, I mean, the person that I am doing the shows and doing these interviews is really me. But,
Right.
just my private me is so much more subdued. You it's almost like a multiple personality thing after a while. But, I love doing this and I adore digging into these topics and having discussions with people about them because I really think this stuff is important. I think this weird and unknown worlds that we're surrounded by and interact with, they're not just the hiccups. They are the breadcrumbs. They're leading us to a bigger truth, I think. I mean, and maybe that's a
Sure.
romantic vision for this, but I mean, so many times people just discard. It's like, oh, that's the weird stuff. But I don't think it's just the weird stuff. I think this is the universe showing us the wonder that we exist in, that we've just
Sure.
maybe closed our eyes to, or just desensitized to, or any number of any possibilities. But this stuff is important.
Well, I think, and I tell everybody, I've mentioned it before on my show, that I think as we get engulfed more by technology, I think
Mm,
human beings in and of themselves yearn for mystery, for the unknown, for not everything that is linear and scanned and, tallied, like everything. Like there's a part of us that likes that fuzzy horizon in a way,
absolutely. And
you
I think
know.
that's probably one of the reasons why the Harry Potter series was
Mm-hmm.
such a transformative thing. It's because in and it did in me. I love the Harry Potter books and the movies and stuff because
Yes.
it brought me back to that childlike state of wonder and excitement, and just knowing that there was this world of magic and wonder, and that to me was exciting. It really
Sure.
rekindled something that for me as an adult I thought I was losing or had lost, and it kind of brought
Yes.
it all back. It's like, hey, this
Well,
is fun.
as Harry Potter, like everybody doesn't realize, and that's my cousin. I'm telling you, I have, if not my children, my family is like, I think that they like get together somewhere and they go, it's your turn, caller.
Yep.
Anyway, um, Harry Potter originally was a children's book, and then it busted out and became popular among adults. I think for that very reason
Right.
that you're talking about,
Hmm.
where it was people were like, wow, and I laugh sometimes because these stars, they've never been able to outrun
Yeah.
their roles.
Sure. Yeah.
They don't want to. They want to still be. In other words, they're actors. They want to go on to other adult roles,
Sure.
but everybody still look. It's like because it's so endearing that it's like, no, you're Harry Potter, and you
Yeah.
can't, and you're like Hermione. What are you doing?
Yeah.
That because that's how even so many years later, people like want to refuse to like go see them in another light. How's that?
Sure. Yeah.
So it's
We
always been like a blessing and a curse, I want to say, for those actors because of the power of the stories.
sure. Yeah.
That, but yeah, absolutely. The whole, and when you look at it, really, it's very a basic good versus evil kind of story and
Right.
everything.
Yep.
But the way it's dressed up, and of course the belief in magic and
Yeah.
all that stuff, where the magic is in a parallel world kind of deal,
Yeah,
where
exactly. It was kind
magic
of
is the norm.
right, and it existed right around our mundane world. It
Yes,
wasn't like we
exactly.
had to go to a galaxy far, far away in a time long, long ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was next door. It was in your cities. You had these little doorways into this world of wonder and amazing experiences. And to me, that was what was novel about it. It didn't hide it away. It said, "Hey, it's right around you," much like this stuff. And maybe it's a childish reference on my part, but I think
Mm-hmm.
that there's a lot of parallels to this paranormal stuff,
Yes.
and that wonderful world that J.K. Rowling created, in that it was
Yes.
right around us. It was just
Yes.
in the next room. It was a whisper away. It was
Right.
just within reach, but we didn't know it. And that was what was so compelling about that. And nobody wanted to be a muggle anymore.
Well, no, this is what and it's the troubles, that they would go through, make sure the Muggles didn't catch on. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
it was
Yep.
like you let the Muggle. That was like forbidden because God
Right.
forbid they should realize that there's this whole other thing going on right next to them.
Yeah.
All right,
It's
this magical world.
mhm.
That you could walk into a building, or there's a building between buildings that nobody sees. Run
Right.
into a chimney, and then you get transported to
Yeah.
wherever. That I think that was great because it was a universe that existed within our own universe as far
Right.
as our present, you
Sure.
know, things that surround us. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that is more intriguing, and how's this that as the years go by,
Mhm.
because there's movies and novels that they have their day and then they fade.
Yes. Oh, of course. Yep. But these
Like
are timeless.
how's this? I'll tell you one. Like remember like the Twilight series?
Oh, yeah,
you know,
yeah, shiny
they were really
vampires.
big. They're three
Yeah,
movies. They were
sure.
made, and now it's like
Yeah.
eh, the vampire that drives a Volvo. Okay, all right, whatever. You
Yep.
know.
You can
I
ride on.
remember I used to be at work and there was adult women that this was before the movies actually came out. They were reading the books like, oh, and I was like, I never even got around there. It's like they're like, no, this is great, this is good, this is because remember the cast there are young adults.
Yes.
Yeah, there's adults, but there's young adults, but yeah. And then now it's like, oh, who cares? But anyway, the I wanted to ask you. I don't
Mhm.
know if you heard a couple of weeks ago about um, this story that came out. How this Planet Fitness in Indianapolis found a guy that had died in the tanning bed, and he'd been there for 3 weeks. I mean,
Oh,
three
dear
days.
God.
I'm sorry. I'm giving you 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, dear God. That's horrible. No, I hadn't heard of that.
Yes, this happened right before Thanksgiving. Okay. Now, this is they apparently his family or his I don't know whoever had reported him missing. Okay. This is
Hmm.
like I believe he was in his late 30s. And I was thinking, okay, doesn't anybody ever go check on these tanning beds? You know? I thought that these gyms wiped this stuff down.
I know. I was thinking the same thing. Aren't they cleaning this stuff
Well,
regularly?
right. Because I'm thinking to myself, what's wrong with this? With
Yeah.
this? Okay, and I was thinking, can you imagine how that? Can you imagine once this happens, you're the one that has to close up
Oh,
the
gosh.
gym at night.
Oh,
Oh my
yeah.
God.
And that's what
Can,
you find.
It's
Yeah.
like, no, hey, you, Joe, you're closing. What do you mean closing? Yeah, you're going to be the last one out. Make sure everything.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, the guy was 3 days in that tanning bed. All right,
Ooh,
talk about that's besides the obvious the that's pretty yucky, but
yeah.
I'm thinking this is the stuff that ghost stories. This is how places get
Yeah.
reputations for being haunted because
You
yeah,
get
did you
home.
hear about that guy was there for 3 days? And I was like,
Yeah.
oh.
And nobody stumbled in there. Nobody even looked. Or I hope the bed wasn't on for 3 days too, because he'd come out
Nah,
like
no, don't know what to
jerky,
tell you.
wouldn't he?
Yeah, it's like, man, you got that'll be the eternal tan. But again, I'm thinking to myself because I know that a lot of these tanning beds or whatever they are,
Mhm.
they have like a timer on them.
Right,
All
right.
right.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And like in other words, from what I understand, he went like on a Friday and didn't find him till Monday. And I know I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, I know those gyms are open on weekends.
Sure.
All right. So uh and then, I think that how they caught on was the smell, something like that.
Oh God.
But
Oh,
and I was thinking I'm going beyond that, like let's let a few months go. Every time that there's a weird noise in that place, especially when everybody's left and it's gone, who's going to take the blame on that? Is it's a dead guy in the tanning bed.
yeah,
But
it's
and
pan fill. Yep.
well, it's like, and then I was like, man, this is so unusual. Then I started looking, and believe it or not, back in 2021, this was I don't think it was a 3 day thing, but another person of the salon customer, she finds a dead body in her tanning bed. All right, all
Oh God.
right. She had paid for like a couple of hours or something like that. The only thing is, of course, that this wasn't like 3 days later. Okay, uh, and it I guess they kind of noticed um that hey, so and so like hasn't walked out I guess from the back wherever the tanning beds are, but they
Oh no.
found it right away. But I was like, man, that's
Oh
weird.
yeah,
But yeah,
that's
this 3 day thing. So I was thinking that this is how places get those reputations for,
yeah,
hey, you got to go to the back and, make sure shut down everything at the gym. And I'm like, they
yeah,
must be drawing straws on that because who wants to be the one that, you know,
yeah.
to make sure. And if you hear it, you hear something, it could be anything. The wind blows hard. It's like, it's the guy from the tanning bed.
They call him Jerky Phil.
And I know, and and apparently I haven't followed up to see what cause of death was, but he was like in his late 30s. I mean, I
Oh,
don't
really?
know. And
So
I
he's a
know
younger
that they
person.
always look at that,
Yeah, sure.
no matter what, because just to rule out foul play or whatever.
Right.
But again, it's like, man, if I had a membership there, I'd be like, nope, nah,
Oh,
that's it. That's the end of this membership.
I'd be going for spray tans. I think that'd probably be the safer
No,
bet.
I'd be like, no. You know what? I think the hygiene part of it, I would be wigged out. Let's take the paranormal out of the
Yeah.
equation. The
Yeah.
hygiene part, I'd be like, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
But That's how, and the reason why I make that is, sometimes we have these ghost stories of, these hauntings that take place that, oh, because, somebody committed suicide or some weird stuff happened, and 30, 40, 60, 100 years later you got this ghost story baked into it. And I'm thinking this is a modern example of how places develop these ghost stories
Oh yeah. Yeah.
that will sometimes even morph. I'm waiting for the guy to make an appearance, like walk out from the back where the tanning beds are. I'm waiting for that story
Oh,
like
right.
any day,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
or the bad smell, or something like that.
Yeah, that's the foul part is that, I mean, human bodies, when they're left to stew at room temperature, it gets all kinds of ugly in a hurry. So
Yes.
how did it take 3 days for somebody to go, what's that smell?
Right. Like, well, I guess
Oh,
I'm thinking because usually, from what I understand, his body will just start decomposing immediately upon
yes.
death.
Yeah. And
So I'm thinking, I'm even before Monday. I imagine even within the next day, I would think that body was already smelling.
oh, for
Oh,
sure. I mean, I'm sure it
and
was
it's like, was no
bloating.
what? Did no employees or what? Nobody goes back there. It was like I was mystified when I read that. I was like, this is incredible. Like,
Well, somebody signed off that they'd been cleaning the tanning
oh,
beds.
that for sure. Hey, no, yeah, it's everything is spick and span.
Yeah, hey, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
I check it off the list. Yeah,
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I could, and but I'm saying, yeah, you know what? You give this enough time, and this will morph into a really great ghost story, especially 20 years down the line. Even if it becomes, something else in the future, that space,
Yeah.
that's usually the way these things happen. This is an example of what even in other words. And what's really funny? You talk about this happening, and somebody will, no, it's not possible. Nobody can be in a tanning bed for 3 days and nobody believe. Who's gonna believe that? And it'd be like, yeah, that truth is stranger than fiction thing, kind of
Yes.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all kinds of horror ideas come to mind, but somebody just wasn't doing their job.
Oh, sure.
Somebody was not
No.
performing the functions of their
And
duties.
yeah, I know that in a lot of places, and then they're shorthanded, and
Oh,
things
right.
of that nature,
Yeah.
and yeah, we could go into that'd be a whole nother show about.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, like, every nowadays everybody's self-sufficient, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when it comes to shopping and doing business, but
Yeah.
let me ask you, the where you're at, are you going out on any investigations at all, or going into any historical places, or just no?
I just did an investigation on December 7th,
Mm,
which was Saturday, December 7th or December 9th. Which was it? It was the 7th. And we went to my co investigator and I, Charles Howard Johnson, and I went to a haunted bar.
really?
And we did an overnight investigation at this bar, which was closed the entire time we were there. But we got some pretty phenomenal evidence. It was
What's the
really
background on this place?
well. The background on the place was it's been around, I guess, since the 1800s, but it's also been a resort. It had been
Mm-hmm.
a speakeasy. It had been a brothel. It had been a lot of things through the years. And the former owner of it, his name was Perry, and he lived in an apartment upstairs, but he died there. But he loved the place, and it's believed he still haunts the place. But there's also a lady, a spirit that's people call her Maddie, and I don't know. I don't really know the background on it, but the story goes that she was a working girl there that loved to play the piano,
Mm-hmm.
and that she, apparently one of her customers was really really rough with her, and she lost her life, and
Mm-hmm.
so she's believed to haunt the place. But yeah, so I mean, there's a background there. There's a lot of claims from people that are regulars at the establishment, like the ladies' bathroom. People get their hair pulled, flipped. The door will rattle when they're in the using the bathroom on the stall, not on the actual
Wow.
outside door handle. And there's lots of things like that. There's apparition seen. Sometimes glasses fly off the bar, apparently, and shatter. And there's all kinds of various claims. But now Charles, my investigator, he's investigated there many times, and he said that he was saying, well, lately we've been investigating this place for years. But he said, I don't know. There must be something about a place that maybe the energy just kind of wanes after a period of time,
Okay.
because as he's been going back, he said he's been getting less and less activity. And
Okay.
I went there. I've been there two other times prior to this. And indeed, we had very little happen. One time my phone dialed 911 by itself, which was a little freaky, but then after that it flatlined, the activity flatlined for the rest of the night.
Okay.
And we've had a few maybes with different equipment, but nothing
Mm-hmm.
convincing. But I'm here to tell you that on the 7th, we were not disappointed. D-Max, it's called D-Max Bar, and I can't remember the lake that it's on, but it's on a lake right here it's near Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
And we had some pretty okay activity, some things happening with like REM pod triggers and yes, no, that there's that black pyramid tool that has the green light and the red light. You might see it on, and I don't remember the name of the tool,
Okay.
but I always call it the yes no detector because it's got a red light, which usually means no, and a green light, which usually means yes, and it gives you the
Yes.
opportunity to apparently, communicate with the spirits with yes or no questions, which is cool. And that was kind of going off a little bit, but nothing really, really convincing, just a lot of maybes. But I thought, well, it was on a night that I usually do a live stream on my YouTube channel. So I thought, well, I'm going to just stream while we're here. I'm going to sit here and stream. So we grabbed a REM pod, the yes no detector, and a K2 meter, and we sat at this table in the dining room area, and we're just sitting there, and
Okay.
I started live streaming. And it was like somebody turned on the light switch. Not
Really?
not literally, but the activity just went whoop. And
Isn't that
it
interesting?
well, what we kind of figured, Charles and I kind of figured, is that perhaps something with that bandwidth that was being, utilized to stream might have energized the atmosphere, because suddenly we're getting hits on the REM pod, we're getting yes nos and a lot of great K2 hits and cold spots. My God, I've never felt cold spots like that before, but it was like sitting in a deep freezer, like a commercial deep freezer. It was like I was frozen to my bones. In fact, the next day, it took until the next day in the evening after I got home at like 8 a.m. It took me the whole
Mm-hmm.
day to really warm up. I just felt like
Really?
I was just devoid,
Wow.
and we slept overnight there too.
Oh
And
boy,
so
that's good.
all of this stuff just kind of popped off. And we did stream it live. It's live on my YouTube channel at the paranormal youtube.com/paranormal portal. And you can watch it's on the investigations playlist, but it's the haunted D-Max bar. And we had great activity, and I was so thrilled. I was, before this, I'd been going around taking footage because I was like, well,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put together a video of all this and kind of a
Right.
template. And I just thought I'd throw a bone by, just bringing the usual viewers of my live show into the experience. But I'm here to tell you, everything before that and after that was pretty much mundane and almost nothing. But when we streamed
That
through
is
that whole
so
streaming experience,
interesting.
yeah, so we're really thinking something about that, streaming that
Mm-hmm.
really energized the atmosphere for these unseen presences. And
That
we
you
got,
ask yourself, what is it? Like
yeah,
it's almost you want to think the ghost. Hey, we're gonna be televised, or we're gonna be
hey,
videoed. Man,
we're
everybody
gonna be
show up.
stars. Yeah.
We're gonna be stars. Exactly. The word got out, and everybody was like, "Hey, come down." Let me ask you, how far back does that building date? That
I think
bar.
it's like I don't know the exact date, but I know it's in the mid to late 1800s in
Okay.
there. So it's
And
before
what did that area start out like, as a mining town, or what was it?
most of it was probably logging or something
Okay.
like that. Again, we're in the north
Yeah.
of Idaho. There have been some gold mines and stuff up in the area, but
Yeah,
that,
but it's one of those little towns that
yes.
the reason why I say this, that a lot of weird, well, let's say skullduggery goes on when
Oh,
these
right,
time, whether it's mining or logging or
right.
whatever, that
Yes.
pop up because everybody pours in there to make money somehow.
Sure. And they're ripping people off and all kinds of,
And like even the like you said, brothels and
right.
saloons and
Yeah.
all that other stuff, that you get a lot of, you
It's like a
know
superstorm, yeah, for a lot of bad
yes,
juju for sure.
you get a lot of people from different places,
Hmm.
and a lot of them are not the best characters, if you know what I mean.
Well, right. And so, but that night, D-Max really showed up. It was really an incredible time, and both Charles and I, and like I said, Charles has investigated a ton of places and for years, but he was really excited by how lively that became and how much activity we got in that hour and a half. And
What
then
did
we,
you what was it? What were you hearing? Was it only the equipment that went off, or did you actually
yeah,
hear anything with your ear?
we kept hearing this sound off on our left, and it was after this sound would happen. It was like this snapping sound, like a like that, but it
Really?
was over on our left. And then a cold breeze came. It was like ice cold. And then,
Right.
and Charles said it first, and I was like, yeah, my left side is cold. My right side wasn't. And we were very
Uh-huh.
comfortable in this place. Now the ambient temperature is about 60 in there. They've got the business pretty much shut down for the night. So
Right.
they aren't going to crank the heat the whole night. So they turned down the
Sure.
thermostat. And but it was still comfortable. We were both dressed warm, but once that cold air came, it was just like, this is really cold. And then it was transitory. This coldness was transitory. And so the tools that I mentioned, the K2 meter, the REM
Uh-huh.
pod, and the yes no detector, are three very different tools. In other words, they aren't just using EM like electromagnetics for
Right.
spikes. The
Yes.
yes no detector uses lasers and proximity detection. And then
Okay.
the REM pod uses an electrostatic field that is around that antenna. And you have to
Mm-hmm.
get in really close to it within 7 inches. I had it set to about the 4 inch mark just to make sure it was really good and close to that antenna. And then the K2, which is EMF and or EM
Yes.
fields. And so these are three different detection methods, and they are going off boom, boom, boom.
Was it
All
in
three of
were they in the what part of it was there a certain room or where did
just
you
where we
guys?
were when we were streaming. We were just anchored at this one table because we had all the
Oh,
equipment.
okay.
And then I was just holding the camera and we were recording and stuff. And then at some point, Charles whipped out his phone. He had a phone app, and I have it as well on my phone, and it's called Spirit Talker. It's kind of a
Never
pretty
heard of
well
it.
known phone app.
I
That
think I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, you might have seen it if you watch any of the paranormal
Mm-hmm.
videos that are online. I know that several people use it, and that's where
Right.
I became aware of it and tested it out. And I showed Charles, and then he's downloaded it. But
And what is it? It's like an ovulus kind of thing.
yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's apparently takes atmospherics and all kinds of detections,
Oh, okay.
and to allow the spirits some methodology to create words. And I can't
Okay.
claim that I understand the science of it. That's even with like an ovulus that kind of eludes me, because how does the spirit know what energy is what words and how to crank it or
Right.
turn it? And that's the confusion part for me. But for some reason, sometimes this stuff really surprises you. But during this live stream, I'm kind of talking to the audience, and we got these triggers going off, these hits, and I'm like, yeah, guys, it's just Charles and I here alone. We're going to be here alone all night. In fact, and I turn the camera over and past Charles, and I'm showing them in the distance. There's a game room. I said, Charles and I will be sleeping in there on the floor. And then I went back to there, and we got a few more hits, and suddenly that phone app goes, "Don't sleep here."
See, what are the chances on that?
Right.
Come on.
Yeah. Exactly. And I was like, oh my God, and I'm on, and all of this is in live in real time. So it's not like
Yeah.
careful editing or something. I mean, everybody that was there watching,
Right.
which it wasn't a huge audience because we did stream late. I think it started about midnight. We went till about 1:30 or somewhere in there. But so most of my normal audience was already in bed or whatever, because I stream at 7 p.m. Pacific time, and it was now
Okay.
midnight. So it was really, really late. But there was still like 10 to 15 people watching the live. And yeah, I mean, they were all there and saw it. So it
You
was
know that
really
that
cool.
that that scene right there. That's a jumping off point for a lot of horror movies. Okay.
Yeah.
When the equipment tells you don't sleep there, it'd be like, oh, hey, they're gonna probably sleep there. Then that's it. That's when whatever.
They should have listened. Why didn't they listen? No.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But we did sleep there, and I'm that cold, the feeling of that deep cold continued around me all night. It was like it was just,
Wow.
like it was sucking me up like a Slurpee, all my body heat. And
Right.
that's why I think the next day I got home. I blasted the heat all the way home, 45-minute drive, and then I
That's
got home and just bundled up and just
maybe you
sat.
had a hitchhiker with you. Maybe somebody
Maybe
decided
it's
I'm gonna
possible.
go home with you.
Yeah, I had few weird light flickers at home after that, but then
Uh huh.
everything settled down. I mean, I try to be pretty conscientious about
Right.
making sure the energy in my house is good, because this is where we live.
Sure. Of
I,
course.
I don't want to stir up a hornet's nest and then drag it home and
Yeah.
go, "Hey, kids,"
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It's like he's like,
but
yeah. All of a sudden, yeah. The
yeah,
let me ask you, and I'm always curious because some of these places I've noticed, does it have like a basement or a cellar, which is a no-go zone, or no?
no, not in this place that I know of. It's actually this bar is literally right on a road. Like it's almost like
Okay.
like the Rams Head Inn in England, how that
Yes.
it's like
Yes.
right next to the road. This is very
Yes.
similar. It's very, very close to the road, and then on the other side of the road is a lake. And it's like at least a very large pond, but they call it a lake there. I think it's Lake Hauser, D-Max on Lake Hauser, Hauser. Now that I
Mm-hmm.
think about it, but so there is no basement. There's no dug
Right.
in basement that I know of. Could there be? Maybe, but it's never been
Right.
brought to my attention. And I
Yes.
just know that the upstairs has been several things. Like they've had apartments up there where the former owner Perry lived, and it has been a resort where they had resort rooms upstairs, and so it's been a lot of things through the years, and it doesn't surprise me. I mean,
Oh
those
yeah.
kind of
When you get that
places,
many people transiting back, especially if it was some
yeah,
type of resort, yeah.
right, and the imprints that might be left there that like an egregore, they might become conscious and creates an entity of sorts.
No, I
So
think a lot of people sometimes assume like hotels or resorts that you might see from your perspective like, oh, it's great, you're having a good time, you're vacationing, and a lot of people sometimes check into these places and there's bad things going on personally for
yes,
them,
yeah,
and it's not always like, you know, oh, it's why would anybody's like, nah, sometimes people got, you
yeah,
know,
people dump their
unusual
baggage
bad
all over.
thoughts.
Yep.
Yes.
And horrible people are out there too doing
Oh yeah,
horrible
of
things.
course.
And so with the histories that we know of, and then God only knows what we don't know that happened there. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot going on in this area. But we definitely had a good investigation, and I love investigating. I would love to, travel the world and investigate
Oh
these
yes.
sites, and any site really. I mean, my God,
Yes.
I don't think you have to go to, Penhurst to find good activity. I
Oh
think you
sure.
can find it anywhere if you can get your thumb on the pulse of what's going on in a community.
As a matter of fact, I think sometimes some of these unrecognized places,
Yes.
sometimes you will get the best evidence, the most that you'll be like blown
Yes.
out of your shoes. And
Hmm.
you're like, oh my God.
Well,
And I
that's
think part of it is like what you said, sometimes some of these places they get visited so often
yes. They get worn
that
out. Yeah.
I don't know if whatever's there, heads for the hills, is like, I'm tired of this, or I don't know what.
I just think they don't engage after a while because,
Yeah.
and I've thought about this. It's like, can you imagine sitting in your house watching television and a bunch of like a group of 5 people come in and start asking you to turn the channel, turn on that light, turn off that light. Can
Yeah.
you vacuum over here? You'd be like, get
Yes.
the hell out. I mean,
It's like, oh, another group. Oh.
yeah. And so I think, and that's the interesting thing. Like Charles and I have investigated several places together. We investigated St. Ignatius, which is a hospital, former
Mm-hmm.
hospital abandoned here in near where I am in Washington State. And this is a place that Ghost Hunters has been, Destination Fear, Ghost Adventures, and a whole bunch of other places had been,
Okay.
and they've had decent activity and stuff, but um that place, when I was there, Charles and I went for 2 nights in a row, a Friday and Saturday night, and investigated this place. And while we were there, in this other town, we stayed at a haunted Airbnb. Now,
Uh-huh.
St. Ignatius, which is very famous for its activity and the things going on, including this old lady Rose, who everybody brings her Coors because she used to love having Coors and a beer. And, but,
Wow.
people have been parading through there for years doing that.
Yes.
And
Okay.
so I think they just get to a point, it's like, oh, here they come again. Jeez.
It's like
And,
no more chords, man.
right. Yeah, exactly. But I'm here to tell you, we investigated 2 nights at St. Ignatius and stayed at the Airbnb for one night. No, 2 nights
Mm-hmm.
as well. And the 2 nights at the Airbnb were incredible. But St.
Yeah.
Ignatius, even it was cool to go there just because
Yes.
I can say I've been there, I've investigated there. But as
Right.
far as activity, it was just flatlined. It was very,
Yes.
very, very,
Yes.
very little, if anything, going on there for us. But
Yes.
that was in the year ago in October when we were there, and people had been going through there every night for months
Yes.
leading up to
Yes.
Halloween. So,
I know.
um,
I To me, I'm like, after a while, it's like,
yeah, exactly.
it's like, all right, whatever's there. If there's anything left, is like, oh, we're out of here, man. This is
Right. And Charles and I also investigated the Davenport Hotel in Spokane, Washington. And that's a beautiful, beautiful hotel. If any of you guys that are
okay.
listening ever get a chance, go there because it is just this incredible. It's like staying in a palace. It is just that
Okay.
beautiful. But there's the Louis Davenport, who is the founder, is believed to haunt there, and there's this circus room, which is one we stayed in, which is pretty fantastic. And we had some activity there, but what we found out, and this is kind of where we found it out, is we would do the standard questions. Is anyone there who wants to talk to us? Is that,
Yeah.
are you male, female? Did you know you died? How did you die? What year is it for you? The canned
Right.
questions that
Right.
everybody and their brother comes in there asking.
Uh-huh.
Well, we got moderate to none activity. But once
Right.
Charles and I sat at this place in the lobby, at one of the
Right.
tables in the lobby area with these big wingback leather chairs, and we just sat back and started talking, just he and I, about this
Yeah,
weird.
it's like a conversation.
And
Exactly.
suddenly they started jumping in. They started triggering things like, "Oh yeah, well
Yes.
they wanted to become part of it." And that's when
Yes.
we got great feedback from these devices that for the rest of the time had just been sitting absolutely inert, but they suddenly
Yes.
sprang to life once we started just communicating between he and I, and it was like,
Right.
"Oh, I got something to say about that," or well, and
Right. Like when the interrogation part, they're out of there.
yeah, I mean, it's just so played out with them. It's like, "Oh God, what year is it? Who cares? What do you mean?"
Yeah, exactly.
But
Exactly.
but
Exactly. It's like, oh,
once we started talking about the phenomena, about our ideas about it, then bing, the flashlight would come on. It's like, oh,
yeah, there
if
you
that's
go.
really you, can you turn that off? Boom, goes off. And then it's like, okay, now
Exactly.
we're on. And then we could engage and start asking
Yes.
questions, curiosities we had. We get some great responses. Like
Mm-hmm.
one of the questions I asked was this is mostly the flashlight test, but I asked, it's widely believed that spirits can move fast. And I said, I often think it's because you guys aren't encumbered by this physical mass that we drag around, but can you guys just move because you're just energy? And boom, the flashlight came out. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's a confirmation. That's a very solid confirmation, along with a little K2 hit. And
Right.
and then it's like, okay, well, can you turn that off? And then we started talking. We got an L through. We got the letter L, which is could be Ellen, who is a woman that apparently fell to her death through a skylight in the
Wow.
1920s, or it could have been Louis L for Louis
Okay.
Davenport. But Charles asked because it was widely believed that he built this circus room because he loved the circus, and he had a friend that was a businessman in Spokane who also would travel with Ringling Brothers as a clown. And so he put
Okay.
together the circus room, and Charles asked, Mr. Davenport, do you like the circus? Nothing. And then he asked, do you actually not like the circus? And boom, the flashlight went
Oh,
on.
you're kidding.
He and I started laughing, and we're like, "Oh my gosh, that's because it flies in the face of the
You know
accepted."
what? Isn't it weird that it's just asking the right question?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
It
what
was
like not the like you said the standard format like what's your name, are you here, what
right.
something that let's go in the opposite. And you know what
Yeah,
people sometimes misunderstand, like let's like what you were describing, the time of the big top and circuses and
yeah,
those traveling circuses. People, that guy might have, to him it was maybe purely money, it was a
yeah.
money making
Absolutely.
endeavor.
Yeah,
And but personally it was like, man, but for him all he thought was, this is not my bag, but it's making me money. But he really
right.
wasn't into it. But then
Yep.
everybody, decades after he's dead, they're all, oh, he really loved the circus. And he's like, no, I didn't.
No, I didn't. I didn't care. I didn't like that at all. I thought it was creepy, maybe,
Yeah,
or whatever he
yeah,
was thinking. But it was funny to get such a contrary narrative to what the accepted narrative was, and
sure.
and it seems like I mean, in both of those situations that we've talked about of investigating. Now, interestingly, with this was at and again in the lobby. This hotel's open, and it was about 3 a.m. when we did this. But we went back up to the hotel or up to our room, the circus room where we were staying,
Right.
and brought down his structured light camera, and we
Okay.
checked the whole lobby area. But when we were at that table, we went to that table we were sitting at, and Charles and I were sitting in two of the wingback chairs. There was another one right across the way, and
Right.
he didn't map any figures until he shined it on that opposite chair, and in that chair was a figure sitting there. Like
What?
that's
Really?
that's where this person sits, and maybe it's Louis Davenport himself, or Louis Davenport. However, it's either Louis or Louis. I never really did get a definitive on how to pronounce it, but I put a video together of that investigation, and it's on my investigations playlist on YouTube
Okay.
as well. So,
All
and it's
right.
some really good evidence.
Yes, yes, yes. And the reason also why I bring that up, what you were saying about that, is that down here in Florida, there's this little town.
Hmm.
It's like south of Tampa, and it was called Gibsonton, but they called it Gibtown.
Oh,
And what
okay.
would happen is all the circus folk would winter here.
Oh,
All
neat.
right.
Yeah.
Now, what happens was that a lot of remember these are early years where they had the freak shows and stuff like
Oh,
that, and
sure.
stuff
Yeah.
that now we would be like, oh my god. But
Uh,
back then, this is how these. But I hate to say it, people don't realize that's cruel. But believe it or not, this is how these people were making a living.
right. Yeah, they
You
were
know,
totally rejected by normal society, but they found their niche.
in other words, this was the day. This is how they. And by the way, some of them really made a lot of money. But
Hmm.
anyway, when they settled here, they they built their little town, and they made the rules like that you could have elephants, that you could have certain animals, that you could
Oh,
park certain things. Like the town, they made it because if they went to any other place, they were somehow breaking the law or something because of the
oh,
animals, or
uh-huh.
because they had certain things of the circus, of the big top stuff.
Sure.
So where they made this area, they allowed for all these things so that they would be within the law. But
Hmm.
when you come and you look at, you study it, let me tell you something. There's a lot of weird stuff. I mean, murders and weird
Oh,
stuff, and
I'll bet.
you know, you always think of it, but these people had lives outside of the big top per se,
Sure.
as far as performance,
Right.
and they had all the same drama.
So they're real people, is what you're
They
saying.
were real people, exactly. You
Yeah.
know, they were real people,
Hmm.
and like in other words, yeah, you might have like stuck a thing on your tongue, but you know, you
Yeah.
had all the same melodrama, love, hate, you know,
Yeah. Yep.
business, money.
Yep.
Uh, that the As a matter of fact, they still have some of the stuff still left out there. They have a small museum out there in
Oh, cool.
Gibtown,
Yeah.
but yeah, some of these places, like what you were talking about, this other place, yeah, there's that. And the reason why I bring this up is that I think sometimes the basis for a lot of hauntings
Hmm.
is human drama.
Oh, sure.
You
Yeah.
know,
I think we very much leave imprints all over the place, even in our
yes,
own homes. Like if you're ever,
yes,
I think that's one of the reasons that I'm really a big fan of regularly cleansing via whatever method. And it doesn't
yes,
have to be sage or, chanting or whatever. It could just be
whatever, yes,
prayers, holy water, whatever
right.
resonates with your spirituality. But I think it's important to knock down those layers of built up impressions, energies that we,
Emotions, whatever.
yeah, exactly. Like to baseline it. It's like spring cleaning in a sense, you
Well,
know.
you know, because people, I think sometimes they get fooled, if you want to use that word. Well,
Sure.
they'll move into a place and it's freshly painted
Uh-huh.
and everything is new and maybe fresh carpeting or whatever.
Yep.
And the part you don't see is what happened there as
Right.
far as
The
the
chalk
lives.
outlines underneath the underneath the
Right, yeah,
carpet.
like
Yeah.
oh my god. Well, now you
Oops.
know that there's a place that it's an organization, you pay for the service, and it's
Okay.
called Died in House. And
Oh,
basically, because you know that different states have different laws pertaining to disclosure as far as
oh,
um
sure. Yep.
but
Haunting.
I believe sometimes it differs by state, and other times it's like it has to be recent. Like in other words, if hey 40 years ago, you know. But anyway, you can plug in your address and you can find out if there was any crime or anything of that nature that took place, even if somebody died in the house, which is
Oh,
not that. But because, like you said, this is so that people don't get like I don't know, like it's like yeah, you might see everything nice and shiny and new, and come
yeah.
to find out there maybe
Oops.
you had like oh what
Yeah. There was
that
what
kind of deal.
rituals going on here? Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah, exactly.
exactly.
That's
There was and I've even heard that there's even real estate agents that is their niche.
oh.
They will go to supposedly what they call stigmatized properties,
Hmm.
all right, and basically work to cleanse it, something similar to what you were describing,
Sure.
whether it's because of maybe murders or you know just weird stuff, or they have found in some cases where the regular real estate agent has come across all this occult paraphernalia. You know,
Oh,
it's very dark,
yep.
and they're like, "Oh man, that room, that hidden room." It's like, "Oh my god," you know,
Yeah.
that
Yep.
kind of deal.
Got to kick out
So
the servitors. The servitors are a bad thing. Those
yeah,
are
so
ritualistically created entities that are
yes,
basically like a living spell. Those are called
Right.
servitors, and that's big in some dark occult practices.
Right. Well, and I tell everybody, you will have people who will invoke or summon things and they know what they're doing.
Mhm.
And then you get others who are just stupid and lucky.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
they pick up a couple of books and
Sure.
you're thinking, oh, these dumbasses.
It's
And then,
Becky and her friends using the Ouija board. Oops.
right. Well, I'm talking here, maybe even like in other words, Ouija board is like, I'm talking about people that they decide they're going to be into the occult and summon something.
Oh, sure.
They really
Yeah.
don't know what they're doing, but sometimes they just get stupid lucky kind of things.
Yeah.
And like you said, they open a portal
Hmm.
at a certain location. They of course then don't know what to do
Yeah,
once
exactly. You know,
once it's there.
you should never open a door you don't know how to close.
There's plenty of people. They think it's a goof,
Yeah, sure.
and then they realize, wow, that really worked. What?
Yeah.
What is
Well,
what?
I think we kind of owe that in essence also to the latest round of investigation shows. And I mean, we've got this real internet philosophy about things. It's like, well, it's like a recipe card rather than
Mm-hmm.
a deep and profound understanding of this stuff and how it can affect you and what are the long-term risks if you don't handle it right, and how what can it mean, and some of this stuff
Sure.
is legitimately dangerous,
Yes.
and people play around with it like they're just trying a new cookie recipe or something. It's like, oh dear God. I mean,
Yes.
in the true schools of esoteric practice, they don't start with the real deep stuff. They start with training yourself, training your mind, training your
Yes.
your energy and your ability to handle and what to do, and in so just to pull up a recipe card on the internet for like, hey, you can summon a helper. It's like,
Yes.
yeah, well, you can also summon a whole lot of problems, and if you
Mm-hmm.
don't know what you're doing, if you don't know how to banish, cleanse,
Yes.
exercise,
Or close
you,
a portal,
yes,
or
yeah,
control what you think.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Your that helper is like, yeah, I'm going to help you. All right. In other words, you're fishing for a sardine and you get the great white instead.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like, all right.
The helper's got teeth and nails, and it's like, oh
Yes,
wait,
like,
that's
oh,
not
I'm
the
gonna
help. That's not the
that
help I
kind of
wanted.
deal. They don't, and it's like, as a matter of fact, um, I'm sure you're familiar. You've heard of Aleister Crowley, right?
Oh, for sure. Yep.
All right. Well, the whole thing was around the time that he was practicing his darker magic. I don't know if he had that house that he bought out there, right on
A
the
Loch
shores of
Ness.
Loch Ness,
Yep.
right? The
Yep.
whole story is that supposedly he did all this spell work and
Mhm.
never closed down. He
Yeah.
never unbanished or unsummoned what he supposedly had summoned.
Right.
And that's why a lot of weird stuff
Yep.
went on there. My point being that even supposedly proficient practitioners, you know,
Yeah.
that even once, because I believe that one time after he had done that, he went to Paris for something, he went to France to do something.
Yeah.
When he comes back, he himself realizes there's something going on in the house.
Right. Yeah. Something
Oh
like
boy,
that. Yeah.
yeah, something beyond like that, the atmosphere,
Right.
the that there was a darkness within
Mm.
the house that even if it was sunny outside. By the way, this house had been around for already for like 300 years. This was a very old house.
Mhm.
But he himself recognized that he had, like, I don't know. And it makes you wonder, did he really believe what he knew what he was doing? Or he just thought, oh, who cares? And
As
then
I
all of a sudden,
Yeah, as I understand it, he was trying to do a ritual called the Abramelin, and the Abramelin would give you command over entities to do your
was it
bidding and
the
stuff.
Dukes of Hell or something like that?
Yeah, and so the but as I understand it, I'm not familiar with it to
Mm-hmm.
any degree, but it's apparently a 6 month long ritual.
There you go.
That's how long it takes to
Yes.
successfully do it, and he didn't succeed. He didn't make it, and that's the risk, of course, in anything like that, because you're meddling in forces that,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure he had a good understanding of what he was doing,
Right.
because he was very very knowledgeable in his practices, but still, the a 6 month ritual anybody could fail, so
Mm-hmm.
and apparently he did, and it let something in that he had no control over.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. And it's like, let's whether you want to call it arrogance or ignorance
Yeah,
or
sure. Sure. That would, I'm sure he was probably, from what I understand of the guy, and I don't know a whole lot about Aleister Crowley, but he was a very proud man, and he was
yes,
very egotistical in his own, in his own way. So, uh,
yes.
yeah.
Did you hear this story? This I think is really interesting, and it goes to show you, that wherever he went, he would get together with women and whatever, and
Mhm.
have children. Well, it turns out that when one of these places that he was at, he got together with his lady, she becomes pregnant by him. They take the child and they turn it over, I think, to the mother's family here in the United States.
Mhm.
She grows up and she has no idea. In other
Oh,
words, she grew up in a normal family. How's that?
okay.
She was very sheltered. She grew up unknowing nothing about her dad or the circumstances of her birth, or her conception or anything like that. One
Right.
of those deals. I
Yep.
believe I want to say it was maybe around the time that I think this was a little bit when he was older. Like I think when he had because he set up, these places, these villas where everybody would congregate and live kind of like a communal kind of lifestyle. I think it was
Mhm.
like towards when he was older, um, in Italy. All right, and this lady, she grows up, and it turns out she lives this she was a church, when I say a church lady, she grew up, got married, had children,
Mm.
regularly attended her church, like she was like
Oh, wow.
I believe they lived in California. Like
Uh-huh.
the family was European and they kind of came to California, and she was like a regular church going. I think that they didn't find out that the mother, I guess, or the family, since it was a maternal family, said this is Aleister Crowley's child, and this came out as the identity. Like
Oh,
she
wow.
died not too long ago. Okay,
Oh,
not too long ago. That this was Aleister Crowley's unknown love child.
oh,
That
wow.
despite her parentage, okay,
Mhm.
she was thankfully, insulated from it by her maternal family, and grew up to be a church lady. I think she was Presbyterian or something like that. Attended her for 50 years at the Presbyterian church. So,
Oh, wow.
talk about nature versus nurture kind of deal. But yeah,
Well, yeah,
even Aleister Crowley did one good thing. What I'm saying is, and she lived like a very normal, dull. What we were talking about life,
sure.
had a family in the whole 9 yards. So, yep,
Oh, that's cool. Well, I'm glad it worked out good for her because she was brought into a situation she had no control over, and
yes,
it would be completely unfair if she had some kind of karmic responsibility to his shenanigans, you know.
exactly. I
So
know
I'm
that
glad.
his other children, he had a child that died very young, and then the other
Mhm.
one, and yeah, his other kids, the ones that they know of, because this guy was like, I guess all the crazy women wanted to have, I don't know, be with him, kind of deal. Like who knows?
Sure. Right.
But yeah, no, the most of his the known offspring didn't do well as far as their own
Mm,
personal lives.
okay. Well, it doesn't
So,
surprise me, I
and
suppose.
by the way, you know that some people will always say that the sightings of the Loch Ness are tied into
Yes.
what he did out there. Do you think there's
Yeah.
any truth in that, or is it just
No.
a coincidence?
I think, well, I mean, God only knows what he did bring into our realm of existence, and I'm sure it's probably not good, but I don't think that that's one and the same, you know. I just think it's happenstance that, that may be the case. I don't know. Is
That
it
he opened a
possible?
portal and a plesiosaur came through?
Well, I mean, he would have had to have opened portals in like Lake Champlain and
Yeah,
about, 15 other lakes around the
I
world.
know. I
Yeah,
know.
but yeah, I mean, I've heard that legend, and it's interesting, but I don't give it much credence personally.
I know. Even though I think there's also a lock not far away that also has its own version of Nessie, out there,
Oh,
and
sure.
uh, and
Well,
it's really funny because they've spent sometimes a lot of money, and effort in trying to find if there's anything in there for sure. I mean,
no. Yeah, there's about, well, there's about 5 or more. This lake right here in where I live, it's called Lake Pend Oreille, and this is one of the deepest inland lakes in the United States, and
really,
there's a legend here of the Ponderay paddler. And I don't spend a lot of time looking at the water here because it's not within, eyesight of my house. It's
Right.
near, but I'd have to go out of my way to. But there's people that swear they've seen some big thing in this water. And I grew up in Minnesota on it's called Lake Pepin. It's the widest part of the Mississippi where I lived on the east coast, southeast edge of Minnesota in a town called Red Wing. But there's Lake Pepin is the widest spot of the entire Mississippi River. And there's a legend that apparently goes back to the First Nations of Pepe. Well, I don't know that the First Nations called it that, but their name
Right.
translate to the tipper of canoes. Like it would roll
Oh,
canoes over,
okay.
and
Interesting.
yeah. But there's Lake Monster there. There's Lake Champlain. There's Loch Ness. There's I don't know. There's several others. Ogopogo, or
Yes.
something like that.
Ogopogo.
Yeah, is another one. So there's so many of these stories, and that I do think people are seeing something that is really
Do they
there.
have sturgeon in that lake where you're talking about? Because I've heard people say, "Oh no,
Which
they think
one?
they're mistaking large those giant sturgeons."
In in
Sturgeons.
in the Mississippi River for sure. I've caught when I grew up there, and I caught sturgeon every once in a great while.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they're a freaky looking fish, and they can get enormously big. And
Yes.
I think that there's a possibility that some of the sightings or claims of this are probably that, or even large eels. There's large eels in that
Yes.
water, and there's huge channel cats in there, channel catfish, and those
Right.
things can get enormous. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things it could be. Especially with bodies of water like the Mississippi, it's like you can't see into that water. There's
Right.
no way you can see in the water. The most you could experience if you were in the water and it is to feel either something brush against you or the current as it's swimming by. And I've
Okay.
heard
That
those
I will.
stories.
That'll do it for me.
Yeah,
Let me say
exactly. Because you
something.
can't even see it coming. It's going to be just there. I mean, literally, I grew up there. I used to swim underwater with my eyes open all the time. You've got about a foot of vision in front of you, and that's
It's
it.
just that
Otherwise,
the
it's just
water is that like that.
it's murky. Yeah, it's just murky. It's just a silty.
Did you ever have any weird stuff that you said, "What in the hell is that?" I think it's time to
No.
get out of the water.
Nope, I never did. I grew up swimming in that water. I was like a fish all my childhood. I never
Mm.
saw anything. I grew up sitting on the shores watching boats go by. I mean, where I lived, it was very rural. There wasn't a lot to do, so we'd go in the water all the time. We were splashing. Like if there
Right.
was a lake monster, we would have been bait. I mean,
You know?
because we're the idiots splashing and playing tag in the water and throwing balls and sticks and rocks and whatever. So if anything was there, it would have been drawn into us. But I think now I'm not saying there's no basis for the legend, but I think probably a lot of this stuff is just people want to have a monster, and maybe there
Oh, of
was a
course.
huge something in the lakes, but I don't know. Maybe it still isn't there. I don't know. They say people still cite Peppy. The thing was, I grew up on this lake. In all my
Okay.
childhood and all my adult years, I never heard of Peppy until I got into my 30s, and
Isn't
I
that
finally.
weird?
Yes, I'd grown up in this community. Now, in my 30s, I heard the first story, and that was actually a neighbor lady that lives a couple miles up the road. She claims that she thinks she saw Peppy. I'm like, what the hell's Peppy? And then I heard the story of this legendary fish there, a creature that's there. I'm like, what? I was sitting there, I was chumming the water for my whole childhood. What are you
Yes.
people doing? You shouldn't have
Yeah.
let me do that. But yeah, and so I'm not a big believer in some of them, but I think Loch Ness has something going on. I think there's something going on in Lake Champlain. I don't know about up here with the Ponderay paddler. Again, I've only been up here a decade, and I've not heard any firsthand accounts or anything from anybody. So it's not like if there is something here, it's really not seen. So
Well, you know what? That that's the thing that when I hear all these stories, really the one that scares me the most, and this is real, is these bull sharks that go into
oh
brackish
god,
water,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then you see all these people happily playing around like in what they're thinking like a freshwater pool or or a little
yeah.
inlet.
Mm.
That's the that and they're ferocious. Those things are
Oh,
man
they're
eaters,
yeah,
literally.
they're testosterone machines. They are really aggressive and they'll eat anything.
Yes. Yes.
I will say that the one thing that I always thought was, well, but I mean, it's just there's no way to tie one and the other together. But as growing up, I did hear of people just drowning, like, oh, she was floating on her back right off the beach and everybody was just splashing around her and suddenly she was gone. It's like, well, where'd she go?
Right.
And they would look for the body, and I don't think they ever found the body of this in this one case. That was an actual story.
Right.
The woman would always go in the water and she always floated on her back. That was her thing. She just loved to just
Right.
float there in the cool, calm water and then suddenly she was nowhere to be seen. No sign
That's
of her,
weird.
and she was just gone. Now, I mean, it sounds like something could have grabbed her and taken her under and had a snack, but
Yes.
I don't think there's enough to correlate one to the other, but it is curious. But people drown though too. They just, maybe
Right.
she
Well,
just
and and um, what was, my God, this lake in that was went dry a year ago
oh,
in California. Oh my God, Marlene, the one that everything was coming up because there was such a Lake
was that
Mead.
Las
Lake
Vegas,
Mead.
you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, Lake
Yeah.
Mead.
Yep.
It's really funny because they were finding, like you said, these were people that had been sometimes in boating accidents, had drowned, and their
Mhm.
bodies had never been recovered,
Right.
despite having intense. And now, they came across some bones that they were trying to match up
Yeah.
to these people that had disappeared or had fallen off the boat. You would think, how can they not be found? And I guess sometimes if a body gets stuck, like, or wedged in somewhere,
Yeah, it'll just sit. Yep.
they can't. And then of course the other ones that are put in a barrel, no,
I was gonna
those
say
that
those don't get drug up real often.
those that's like, how far away was that from Las Vegas? Oh,
Yeah,
he's wearing '80s clothes. Well, you know what that is.
that makes
You know
sense. Yeah. There's
that
a lot of
there was
organized
a lot
crime.
of stuff coming up from that Lake Mead. It was like, wow.
Yeah, and I don't mean to laugh like it's funny. It's just, it
No,
is
it is.
tragic,
I mean, it's
but it's yeah, I mean, there's the old saying, the truth will eventually surface.
yes. Well, can you
Sorry,
imagine?
had to
And,
do the
and
room
this is
chat.
the thing that sometimes I'm sure you've heard of it. There's people sometimes that have disappeared, and
Mhm.
years later they around in the, like, especially in South Florida, they have a lot of canals or even lakes, and they'll bring up a car, and there's that missing person.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's sad, and,
Yes,
I
that
mean,
is. That is.
granted, the one place on this planet that we're really way out of our element, and there's only a few people that are kind of in their element, and that is the water. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why the oceans remain largely unexplored and stuff. It's like
I'm very respectful
we
of the.
we
I'm
don't
very
go there
respectful of it.
because we can't live there. We
No.
can't survive there. There's not like it's just it's a little cold. It's like there's no air. We can't breathe. So if we
We
go there
cannot run and climb up a tree in the
and and
water,
and we
which is how
suck
we.
swimming, yeah. Like we're not fast swimmers in terms of like the rest of the stuff in the water, like
Oh, come
gators
on.
in Florida. Yeah, you know,
Even a
gators.
sea turtle will go by us and, like,
Yeah.
a
Oh,
slowpoke.
yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, we're
we
good.
are really, really out of our element. So it doesn't
Yeah.
surprise me that, a lot of these people remain undiscovered because we just don't
Yeah.
go there. And the people that
Yes.
do, they can't cover all that ground, you
No,
know?
I know. I know there's certain groups that sometimes these are divers that for free, they start, they'll take a case and they
Yeah.
start, and they have found quite a few. They
Yeah.
sometimes they retrace, but it's really funny because sometimes people go missing, and there's even like murder investigations, or they're trying to figure it out, and or
Yeah.
what happened to this person, and they
Right.
ran away. They left behind their loved ones, and it turned out here they are all this time,
Yep. They didn't run.
which could. And I'm sure you've heard of these stories. Was this in? I want to say it was California. That there was one
Mhm.
story about this lady who, she was with her kid in a car, and she went off the side of the road,
Oh, dear.
and
Mhm.
she got killed. But the way they found and the way the car went off the road, it couldn't be seen. Like, in other words, unless you got out and actually looked to
Oh, yeah.
look, you wouldn't realize. And finally, the way they located was that somebody saw this lady standing by the side of the road. And by the way, this was real. This is not, this is not like the Phantom Hitchhiker kind of deal.
Right.
When they came, they found the child. It was like a toddler was still alive, and she was deceased. You
The
know,
mom was, yeah.
yeah, the mom was right. The mom was deceased,
Yeah.
and they're there looking for, hey, the lady that we saw standing up on the road, and come to
There,
find out,
there she is in the wreckage.
she's in the wreckage.
Yeah.
As far as that you have that apparition, which is, I'm not, I want to save my child,
Yeah.
and she appeared, from what I understand, solid enough that they thought this was a real person.
Right. Yep. Yeah, exactly. I think that's a beautiful story. I think I can't remember how many times I've heard that, but it just is a great reminder that, you know, that her soul, or an angelic soul that
Mm-hmm.
appeared as her, one of the two, and I can't know for sure which is which, but made sure to get that baby help, and that's so beautiful. And
Sure.
the baby survived. That's the
Yes,
good part.
exactly, and that's
You
that's
know.
the thing,
Yeah,
that
but
sometimes the that you think, well, like, in other words, that there is some, how's this, some type of free will even after our bodies die. How's that?
right, sure. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't, as a parent, I couldn't imagine anything being more important than you can't help, but you got to get someone else to, because your
Right.
your baby needs you, and they need somebody,
Exactly. They need
and
somebody.
how strong is that love to just, push through and make that incredible event happen. But
Yes.
it's a beautiful
Yes.
story, but
Right. And
tragic.
well, it's tragic, but it could have been more tragic.
Yes, exactly. If it
And
was a
and the same thing I was gonna say. You hear a lot about these near-death experiences of people, that the reason they come back when they get
Mhm.
supposedly to this
Yeah,
choice moment
yeah,
is because they think of their families or their kids or things like that.
sure.
And it's like, no, I'd rather stay here, but I know I'm needed. Their love
Yes,
pulls them back. You hear a lot
yeah,
of these stories of these NDEs
yes,
having that, because you always hear of the story where they're told, no, you got to go back, you're not done,
yep,
and then there's others where they're asked, what do you want to do?
right, yeah.
You could stay, or you could go back.
Hmm.
And
And
I
it's
want to
love.
say, most of the time, from what I understand, it's your children
Yes. Yeah, I
that
think you're right. And the beautiful thing is that, and I think it's wonderful, is that those people are never afraid to die again. It's like
yes, exactly.
they just know they're going home.
Yes, that they say that that's one of the common features, that
Hmm.
all these people now, they're that fear, that I guess it's inherent, because
Sure.
nobody's really, is gone. It's like,
Yeah.
no, I'm not worried about dying. It's not like now, like the unknown or that kind of
Right.
scenario. Yeah, that's one of the common denominators.
Yeah.
The and the by the same, I tell everybody sometimes, when you hear about all these ghost stories, you wonder, how many of these people are trapped because maybe they were the ones that thought there is no afterlife.
Right.
Once you die, and then all of a sudden it's like, what?
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, exactly. I think there's probably several reasons somebody can remain earthbound. Some of which I think is just fear.
Sure.
People, if you look at a lot of traditional religions, they teach of judgment, and I
Uh-huh.
think,
Yes.
people know, I was a great person. I really believe I was a good person. I think everybody knows they're a jerk sometimes, and they do horrible things sometimes.
Yeah.
And you can cover it up to people you live around, and you can, no, they don't know anything about that. But when you're facing that final thing, it's like, yeah, I was kind of a dick. I just I don't want to risk it. This closet looks just fine to me. I'd rather hang out
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
than that burning lake thing. And,
Yeah, that I'm gonna go to the hot place, and it's like, oh,
yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah. So I think, in some cases, if they were people that they're like, they've been conditioned to believe that that's what their experience is going to be. And far be it for me to say yes or no, but, I can understand if you don't think you led a very virtuous life, and you're looking at,
yeah.
there's no do-overs anymore. Whatever I'm facing is what I got to deal with. I'll stay here. That makes
I think
sense.
also there's a portion of them, and some of them, they're way worse than just being jerks. Some of them are just bad
Yeah.
people.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And I want to say, I know this sounds weird, but I think that in some instances they believe going to heaven, let's say for example, to be like, that's going to be really boring. you know
Oh,
Everybody running around singing and stuff.
all that
I'll just stay
happiness.
here, and
With all that happiness, I'll stay
yeah,
here.
yeah, and like drive everybody crazy, and that, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
that kind of deal. Like, yeah, I think that personalities, that overriding strong type of personalities, even people that are real pieces of work, and that's to put it nicely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, by the way, I think a lot of times where you have these cases where people or the investigators are like, oh, demonic, and I'm like, Nah. I think that's overused. I say, you know, that there's people that were really bad people when they were alive, and after death, they're still bad people. It
Right.
may be what you're picking up is the bad vibes from this personality style, but they're human. They're
Yeah.
just bad.
Yep,
Yeah.
there's just some brutally horrible people out there. I used to work in
Yes.
corrections for 15 years,
Oh,
and
whoosh.
both sides of the spectrum. I saw some people that just had a tough run, and they just
Mm-hmm.
needed someone to believe in them, and they did
Right.
amazing things. They turned their
Mm-hmm.
lives around, did some incredible stuff. And then I saw the other side where it was just like it wouldn't have mattered how much
Yes.
time, caring, and effort you put into somebody, they were always just going to be a black hole of an abyss, and there
Yes.
was just no way to fill those holes that were
Yes.
in their soul. And
Right.
all you can do is just, and what I worked in juvenile corrections, not
Mm-hmm.
adults, you don't really worry. It's like you're just here to do your time. But juvenile, we had a behavioral model, and trying to do some cognitive restructuring, dealing with people that
Sure.
were
You're
coming from
trying to
very,
think, how can we straighten this out before
yeah. How do we get rid of
this
those
person becomes a
self-defeating,
scourge on society, right? Kind of
right,
deal.
victim cultures,
Mm-hmm.
self-defeating behaviors, and victimization cultures, and so on and so forth. Might makes right, gangs, everything that's broken from their, where they came from, and to try to put them together, and get them at least the ability to have a choice. That,
Exactly.
because if you take a kid that's grown up in just hell, and they've been
Yes.
told that they're a piece of crap and they're not worth anything, and they're victimized by other people, and they learn this idea that strength is all that matters. I need to be stronger,
Yes.
and I need to make people afraid of me, and so
Yeah.
that's the
I'm
only
not going to be the
protection.
victim anymore. I'm going to be the
Right.
victimizer now.
Right, and so they don't really have options but to give them at least an opportunity to learn constructive behaviors, how they can utilize, some positives in their life, and reinforce the strengths they do have, because a
Yep.
lot of these people were not throwaway people. They
Mm-mm.
were they were just they just had a really bad run, and it wasn't any of their faults, but they just grew up in
Yes.
damage. And so of
Yes.
course you're going to become damaged. And so,
Yes.
but then again, there was the other ones that you just look
Embrace
in
the
their
darkness
eyes.
kind of deal.
Well, yeah, they just didn't have, when you look into somebody's eyes and you see light and you can see that there's a
Yeah.
vibrant presence there.
Yes.
There were so many eyes I looked into that were just dead. They would just
There's nothing
assume
there.
they would just as soon peel your skin off as look at you.
Yeah. I'd be like, man,
Yeah,
ooh, there's nothing here to work with.
right. I mean, and they'll regurgitate what they need to in order to
Oh,
meet some
sure.
requirements
And,
and
and,
stuff.
and, and that's the thing that people don't, I think for normal human beings, some
Mhm.
more than other, we kind of sometimes fail to see how easy it is for, let's say, some type of either sociopath or psychopath to lie so easily and so glibly and so
Oh,
well.
yeah,
Because for us, it'd be like, man, I'd be stumbling over myself, like, oh, here's the lie. And for them, they're like, blah, 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 blah. And like they know how to, like they learn how to mimic emotion or how to pluck at your emotions.
sure.
Because,
Yeah.
like you said, especially if you're talking a juvenile,
Mhm.
where you're thinking, oh my God, it would be great if we could salvage this kid,
Yeah,
and get him on the right track and, not have him repeat maybe the story of his, whatever his family of origin was. And then it's kind of like you feel like, okay, I must be really vanilla because I fell for it. Later on, when you find
mhm.
out, one time, this is, I was, somebody I was working with. Well, he was like, we were talking about stuff, and he used to be a tech at a psychiatric ward for children. All right. Now,
Oh,
remember, children are considered 18 and below, and I'm sure you know what that means, right?
yep.
Okay, so they had a psych ward, and he says how they always took um the trouble to make sure that the techs and everybody working in that would they be rotated among all the patients that were there,
Mhm.
right? And he said some of them were there for longer than others, depending on what they were in there, for if they had been diagnosed with behavior disorder, psychiatric, whatever. But anyway, they made sure like there would be no attachment, like there would be no. They had this one girl, she's 17. She was, I can't remember what she had been diagnosed with, but she was kind of violent. But at the same time, she'd be really nice. And she was like, with him, she started talking to him, and nobody could get anything worthwhile out of her whenever they came to interview her. But with him, she would open up to him and tell him all this
Mhm.
stuff. And about her family and like make him feel like, hey, she's talking about her.
I'm making a difference.
Yeah, there you go. This was
Mhm.
very early in his career,
Okay.
and and he says, I was being rotated, and they were telling me, hey man, the only one she'll talk to is you. She doesn't want to. Sure enough, later on, well, how was it that they found out? Somebody saw a note. I think it was one of the other texts. Finds a note where this girl was setting up a plan along with some of the other patients there that were close in age to
Mhm.
murder him.
Oh, God.
They were going to, one was like, I'm going to distract the people here, the the guard, not the guards, but the people that are there, and the
Yeah.
other ones, and that she was going to kill him. And
Oh,
later on, they asked her, why would you? And he goes, because he knows too much about me. In other words, she was the one that gave
wow.
him all this information about herself, about her background, and all this, I imagine, experiences she had. And it's because I've opened my big mouth. Now I realize that I need to get rid of you.
Yeah.
Plus,
You
I'm
know
going to
too
drag
much.
in all my buddies here on the ward too. And he says he says he's never forgotten that was very early. And he
Yeah.
says, I realized that as much as I want to help, or like you said, make a difference, or that I could be beguiled because I'm thinking, oh my God, here's this young person that really needs just is misunderstood. How's that?
Yep. Yep.
And then, you realize, uh, no, that, you might have been chronologically older than her, but she could run circles around you.
Yeah.
She played you. She played you. And
Yep.
coming back to what you were saying, I think for normies like us, we've kind of find it difficult to believe how easily even a young person could lie or,
Oh, yeah. I mean, for us, truth has meaning and it has
yes,
purpose and
exactly.
it has value. And
Yes,
we've been taught to, to uphold that in as many ways as we can. Nobody's perfect, but for a person of, at least average adjustment, telling a lie is a painful thing. It's a hard thing to do.
sure.
But when your whole life has just been a lie and based on brutalization and victimization,
Yeah,
it's worthless. It's worthless. That's I think that's how how sociopathy happens or
sure.
psychopathy and all of that is just
Mm-hmm.
that they don't understand that there's a value in morality and decency, and it doesn't matter because it just means whether they get hurt or not.
Well, and this, I know, this is, and people find it hard to believe that even if they were treated brutally by their caregivers, whether they were the parents, the grandparents, family members, whoever, or very abused very badly, when they grow up, they still want to go back home. They
Yeah,
still have this attachment to
sometimes.
the
Yeah.
parent,
Hmm.
and some people can't understand that, and I've witnessed it.
Yeah.
And then I'm saying, as far even as it wasn't only what they were experienced, but they were taught, what they saw by example. How's that?
Hmm.
Let's say, where they grew up in, that even if they were hurt or whatever, somehow or other they still want to return
Yeah.
when they become like 13, 14, 15, 16 years old. If they had been taken away from the parents or whoever was
Hmm.
doing whatever, they still want to go back.
Yeah.
And
Because I think they just, on some level, I think they must crave that acceptance.
yes,
That
exactly, that's
you
exactly
know,
what it is.
yeah, that
That's
there's
exactly what it is.
some deep seated childhood desire to be loved and accepted and
Sure,
to
absolutely.
I don't know, fix it maybe, but yeah, because
Yes.
I think that's unfortunately most of their anger and rage is based off of just being hurt so
Well,
profoundly,
mm-hmm. And
so
then we go through patterns of repetition, like exactly like what you just said. We want to fix it.
yeah.
We want to go back and fix it. That whatever that scenario was, that episode, which whatever. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's one of those things that makes up human. So yeah,
right.
whatever you do, be a good mom and dad.
Yeah, take
Be
care
a
of the
good
babies.
caretaker. Oh
Yep.
yeah, let me tell you something. I still mind. Mine are adults, and they're still like, "Mom." It's like, "What?" I have a grandson. I have a grandson
Oh,
that's living on a
good.
cottage in my thing. Because guess what? They're. It's like, you're always thinking. it's really funny as far as that. Even though they're technically adults,
Yeah.
in your eyes, they're still kids. It's like, what are you
They'll always
doing?
be our babies, won't they?
They'll always be our babies.
I got a I
Exactly.
got a I got a 30-year-old boy, and he's still my baby boy. It just
And
that's
how
how it
how
is.
old is he?
30.
Real that I know. I've been there, done that.
Yeah, he's 30.
Been there, done that, and it's really funny because, you always there's a point that you realize I've got to like stand back because as parents we're always like, oh, don't do, we're thinking,
Oh God.
oh, this is not good, this is not
Yeah.
good, don't do that, but then you stand back and you go, well, okay, and then because
Yeah.
we always want to protect our kids even when they're,
Absolutely.
but yeah, they I remember when I was doing investigations and my boys, they were like not even 2 years apart, and I would take them with me. They always had this running joke, and they'd always say, you know what, if you come across something, you see people running in the other direction, and here's mom going, hey, what is that? They had this thing like,
Yeah.
mom's gonna be like, did you see that? And they're like, you hook on that arm and I'll hook it on the other, that kind of deal.
Yeah.
But
They're
yeah,
not-
I would give them like, hey, take base readings on temperature.
Mhm.
I had my other one that I say, hey, one time we were at this place where the attic, it was one of those little narrow stairs that you had to. And I said, Andrew, guess what? You're gonna go up there and see if. And he's like, okay, mom. But yeah, my boy, I was like, I'd be like, some of the things that, yeah, that was like the running joke between them, like. Yeah, I've seen, like, or like, here's Godzilla coming down the city street. Mom's like, look at that.
Let's get some readings.
Yeah, let's get some readings.
That's
But
funny.
man, I'm telling you, it has been such a pleasure to talk to you again, Brent. I really enjoyed this.
Oh,
And
likewise.
let me ask you, I know you've got, for my podcast listeners, where can they find your podcast?
Probably the best place to find any information about me and my shows. There's two very different shows: the podcast, which is available on all the audio platforms, and video as well, like Spotify and such, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Castbox, all of the whole gambit, iHeartRadio. But then I do a YouTube show, and that's very much like a variety show dealing with like 2-hour episodes where I talk about a little bit of a lot of things, just cover
Okay.
a lot of different bases, including news and stuff, which is kind of fun. And so,
Sure.
but the one place where you can find all of that information and even social media contacts and email is go to paranormalportal.net. Again,
Okay.
paranormalportal.net. That's my homepage for the Paranormal Portal. And that's where you'll find out anything about what I'm doing.
Let me ask you, do you have any besides your show, or are you planning any investigations, any places you're going to go to, or like that live stream? I thought that I love that. I love that live stream and let's see what happens kind of deal.
Yeah, I thought that was a lot of fun too. But I would investigate every weekend if I could. It's just uh,
Yeah, I know.
this last year was a real wash for me to lock in on locations. With Charles does a lot of the searching and finding us places to go,
Mm-hmm.
but he just ran into a lot of dead ends this last year, and I don't know why. Hopefully, 25 will be a better year for investigating, and we can dig into a
Sure.
lot more places. But honestly, I would go anywhere and everywhere that we could.
Sure.
I love doing it. I love that the prospect of apparently, potentially making contact. I think that is so
Sure.
exciting and incredible. So, but yeah, I mean, I'll go anywhere I can. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
conferences I want to attend coming up this next year. So,
Yes.
keep watching for that. If you want to
Mm-hmm.
know where I'm going or when I'm going there, probably facebook.com is the best place. Look for the Brent Thomas profile if you can, or
Okay.
Paranormal Portal Radio on Facebook. There's also a Paranormal Portal fans. Those are the three Facebook pages that I take care of. So
Okay.
yeah, I'll do whatever I can to put the announcements out there. But um, the live shows on YouTube are every Wednesday, Friday, Saturday from 7 p.m. Pacific through 9 p.m. Pacific time, whatever that means for your time zone.
Yeah,
And
mornings. Well, I'm in Eastern and you're Pacific,
yeah,
3 hours. Yeah.
yeah, 3 hours
3 hour
difference, but
difference.
then there's global too. I have listeners in Australia and all over the place.
Yes.
I don't know how to
Yes.
do all that math in my head, but yeah. And then the podcasts are released every Monday, and
Okay.
I've got over I think 518 podcasts out there, and then like 1,700 and some episodes on YouTube. So
Yeah, let me tell you something. Sometimes when I'm gonna release something, I'm like, okay, it's this time here, but where is it? What's the time in the UK? Like,
no,
all right, well, okay, I can't help it. I can't, There's always gonna be somebody that's gonna be asleep when I release this. So,
yeah, absolutely. There's no perfect time, but at least people watch when they can. Like
of
if they
course,
aren't able to watch it right away, they'll always watch it. That I've got some incredible supporters and listeners and fans, and I'm
yeah.
so incredibly blessed. And I want to make sure to wish everybody out there a really Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever you celebrate. Just embrace those you love and hold them close,
Hmm.
and just cherish these moments because Kyle, they go so fast.
Yes, yes, we were
So
talking about that. How quick time slips by.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So
Again, thank you so much, Brent, and I want to wish you the best of luck and most definitely a very happy New Year.
oh, thank you, Marlene.
Take care. Let me tell you, I love speaking to Brent. See, he's still doing. I've been kind of lazy when it comes to going out to investigate. And the thing is this: before I used to do a lot, a lot of the residential stuff. All right. And again, and I've mentioned it before. Believe it or not, when I was doing it more. This was even before the emergence of TikTok and all this stuff, where people were like publishing stuff. And even then, people were like, "Wow, this is you're not going to talk about this, right? Right?" I was like, "No, absolutely not." But even now, people are very sensitive about. In other words, it's despite what people think, some people are very touchy about, look, you're not gonna, I don't want to see my house or what, none of us are, on TikTok or any place else. So it kind of like it makes it difficult sometimes to do it as much as I used to before. How's that? And it's one of those things. And in historical places, sometimes I've done some historical places, and I kind of like sometimes I get disappointed because I think something similar to what he was describing, where sometimes some of these places that people have gone over and over and over again, if something was there, it's like they're like, we're gone, we're like hiding out in the attic, the basement, or they're just, or this energy was just dissipated or gone into maybe a portion of, this is one of these old buildings, into some unused portion where like nobody's gonna bother me and ask me for the umpteenth time, what my name is and what year it is or some shit, like that. So historical places, I kind of like feel a little bit weird about that. And I'm going to show you this picture. This is from 2005. This is me and my son. We're in an investigation. Okay. And he's right next to me. This is in a historical house in Fort Lauderdale called the Stranahan House. All right. Which was prior to it, obviously, because now it's like a museum kind of deal because it was right on the banks. It was made right on the banks of a river, and right there in the Fort Lauderdale Broward area. And the original usage, it was like a trading post. When these little towns were popping up, and there would be like one central place where everybody would go to do business, gossip, and that was the origins. And it had, some dark things happened there eventually from the people that settled there. But anyway, I was there. I did several investigations of this house, and there's me with my son Brandon. He was a teenager, and, here's another one. This is my other son, who again, we're like, like I tell him, if you guys are gonna come with me, I want to give you something to do. As in, oh, those narrow stairs leading up to the attic. Guess what? Can you take care of that for me? And teenage boys being, and by the way, I'm gonna enlarge this picture a little bit. Teenage boys being who they are, they will, of course, take me up on that offer right away. As you could tell, there's my other son, Andrew. See, he's up the stairs and he's coming up into this entrance to the attic. You can't tell well, but this is full of little orbs. By the way, I'm not. I'm very I'm very, what's the word for it? Orbs. Once upon a time, and it's really funny because I look at some of these old, you know, paranormal shows, and it says an orb, you know, and oh my God, it's the orb, and there's an orb, and I don't know. To me, orbs could just be anything. It could be specks of dust. It could be anything. So I really don't. But they say after saying that there's several orbs here, and the reason why I say this is that that attic, the people that um this place was like a one-story place, had a big wraparound porch, and it had that attic up there. And now the besides being a museum, they have like a gift shop downstairs. And there had always been stories of somebody being heard walking upstairs in that attic. All right, that's why I sent him up there, or to open it up. I wanted him to take a couple of shots, things of that nature. I can't believe it. That's going to be 20 years ago. Wow. All right, Marlene. So again, and a lot of things, like, again, a lot of people attribute the hauntings to the family that lived in the Stranahans, which were considered like settlers of the of the area, but they also traded a lot with the Seminoles, and that's the thing. When these areas are being settled, you get normal people, settlers, and you'd be surprised. You sometimes get some very doubtful characters that move in, because they know that when they open up these, like I was telling him, whether it's a mining town or these, the law is few and far between. So let's say if you were wanted out in Nebraska or Colorado for shooting down a guy, you'd hightail it down to Florida or some other place, in this little town, what's not even a town, how's that? It's just a settlement that they opened on the river, and because you knew the law wasn't going to be after you, and they might not even know who you were. All right, so that's how you would end up with a lot of unusual like, murders or things of this nature, because just what would end up there, even though what happened at the Stranahan house actually involved the family was there. Really interesting. But again, the I need to get back to that. I need to get back into doing some cemetery runs. I have, out where I'm at, I have some really, really old cemeteries here, smaller ones. Out here, I would say cemeteries are smaller, not like these, where you go to the city and you got these huge cemeteries that go on for acres and acres and acres. Out here, they're more numerous, but they're smaller. Some of them are quite old, and sometimes you can even tell, where the old ones are, because they've got the bigger monuments, all that stuff, and then they kind of like flattens out, because everything is just, back then it was a big deal. Even if your family wanted to keep a little bit of status, they'd put up an obelisk or something, just so that, like or a family plot in some cases. But yeah, it's really interesting to see just society even treats what was it that, as a matter of fact, I was writing an article, and they were talking about, the deviant burials and things like that, and one of these things, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, so if anybody don't, I think they're called Cellinis or Cellinis, and they were finding some of these as far back as the 8th century in Ireland, okay, which is when the idea of purgatory came in, like, supposedly unbaptized children, stillborns, criminals, people who had done bad things, even the victims of the murder. All these people would not be allowed to be buried in the regular graveyard or consecrated ground. So they made these Cellinis or Cellinis or Silly. I have a feeling I'm pronouncing this wrong. Where it was supposedly these people would, in the belief system, would be going to purgatory. It's like, okay, we can't bury them where all the other people are, but let's say like a child, like what fault? I mean, it was even, and I was surprised when even said murder victims. Is like, man, how could, that's, you were victimized, people that died strangely, or by they would end up in these unofficial graveyards, for lack of a better word, right? And there's several of them. And the thing was this: originally, everybody thought that this was later, where they found, when I say deviant burials, people that, especially like in Eastern Europe, like vampires, where the people at that time, in some cases, mostly rural areas, but it could be anywhere, to be honest with you, there was this fear that this person had died, sometimes under mysterious circumstances, or was going to come back from the dead. And they've dug up these cemeteries as far as doing digs, from a university, and they found people with sickles across their neck or stones in their mouth, because it was believed that when the person died, the soul left through the mouth, and either the spirit or an evil spirit, if it wanted to come back and reanimate the body, it was through the mouth. So a lot of times they would either put a stone in the mouth and put the corpse face down. Sometimes they would do a bunch of other stuff, and they would sometimes they'd even stake them down, as far as with a rod, cut the head. I mean, a bunch of stuff. But anyway, they were surprised to find that these weren't deviant burials, but they didn't realize that even as far back as the 8th century, which we're talking, it was medieval times, that, how's this, that there was a, shoot, I want to say like a fear. In other words, they wanted to take care of the dead, that in some case, because remember, if you were a murderer, because they said that usually these unofficial cemeteries were at crossroads or in the middle of nowhere, like away, but always there was this fear of, if we don't somehow take care of this deceased person, they're going to come back. And I'm not talking only about that they're going to rise from the dead corporeally like the vampire, like their ghost is going to come back. So it was like a halfway remedy. How's this? Like, we can't bury you in the graveyard where everybody else is, but we want to find a place for you. First of all, either it's not your fault, or we just want to make sure that you don't come back and haunt us. And this was like, I guess, like what's the word I'm looking for? You like a halfway point, like, okay, we're still going to like give you some type of burial here. Okay, don't come back. So yeah, the power of, or the fear of, the dead is always been very prevalent uh, in our society. And getting back to my original point, that now when you see the modern times, as far as cemeteries, like before, they used to have all these decorations and all these things, and now it's like all you get is a slab, and that's it, if you're lucky. And cremation has taken off big time, big time. So yeah, it's very interesting. There's a whole, matter of fact, if you could catch one of my interviews with this lady called Tui Snyder, Tui Snyder. I've interviewed her like 3 times, and she tours cemeteries around the world, and she talks about the different customs and the symbology in all these cemeteries, especially these older ones. It's really interesting. You can catch it on my YouTube channel. Plus, you can also go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com and Pellicer.com. You're going to find the links there to the video, to the podcast version of it, and all the shows, And then, of course, please sign up for wherever you find this. Subscribe so you can get notified. Sign up for my Substack letter. Sometimes, no, I would say like once or twice a month, I'll put out older videos, just as interesting. In other words, they're still relevant. It's not like, like a news that you're saying, oh, who cares, that happened. No, the information, what we talk about, is still relevant. It's really interesting, if I might say so myself. But anyway, guys, for those of you, even if you hear this a little bit staggered, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, Merry Christmas, all of the above. I don't know. I was, like I said, when I was talking to Brent before we started recording, and we were talking briefly about what our plans were for the holidays and for the New Year's and things of that nature. And I was like, you know what? Dull is interesting. Sometimes just staying home and maybe cooking a nice meal and binging on a show or whatever you want to do, something, um, hey, it's good. It's good. I know there's a lot of people, it's like party time. I already did that. I already did that. I already went through party times. I already did the having children, and you want to make the holiday special for them, and Santa Claus, and I've run the gamut. Like I tell everybody, now I have a fake tree. I have a fake little tree. Why? Because there were for many years I had to haul in this huge real tree because my kids wanted a big tree and they wanted to smell, and they would be all excited to decorate it, and I'd be like, so guess what? Now it's like I got a fake little tree. But yes, to you and yours, wishing you the best, and please come back every week. I've got some great guests, lots of interesting people, the returns like Brent, and new ones. So till next time, take care.